For a quarter of a century, I had the honor to be the director of a neurological department at a general hospital. And believe me, throughout that time, I had ample opportunities to watch and witness how most young people could master their fate. Young girls, for instance, that had danced a weekend before in a disco, then were paralyzed due to a brain tumor or a tumor of the spinal cord, a neoplasm of the spinal cord. Or how young men who the last weekend still were skiing in the Austrian Alps or driving their Yamaha motorcycle, could no longer move a leg. And I've seen people who were amputated. All four extremities had to be taken away due a certain case, what I have in mind, due a high voltage electric accident. And I know that one told his former nurse from the hospital, he wrote to her a letter, before this terrible accident, I was bored and always drunk. And since my accident, I know what it means to be happy, imagine, with no extremities. I know what it means to be happy. His life had become full of happiness again, simply because as long as you are pursuing happiness, as the phrase reads, as long as you are aiming at happiness, you cannot obtain it. The more you make it a target, the more you miss the aim and you miss the target. This is most conspicuous in cases of sexual neurosis, where exactly those people, male patients, who are striving to demonstrate their potency, they fall prey to impotence. The more a female patient tries to show to herself at least how much she is capable of experiencing a full female orgasm, the more she's doomed to frigidity. But at the moment, you do not think of pleasure or happiness, but just you give yourself, be it in sexual activities, be it in work, be it in love, at that moment that you are no longer concerned with becoming a happy or a successful man or a woman. At that moment, happiness installs itself by itself.
But Dr. Frankl, tell me, how could the people in the death camp at Auschwitz, and you were there yourself, what meaning could they take out of an absolutely hopeless situation? They knew they were going to die.
What I can say about the lesson I took home from Auschwitz and Dachau and so forth, let me prefer to speak in a more personally detached way by referring to the absolutely parallel experiences that people had in prisoner war camps. The literature, psychiatric literature in the field of psychiatry of POW camps shows, independently from each other, that psychiatrists found out that those inmates or prisoners were most likely to survive the camp period. Those, I say, who were orientated toward a future, orientated for becoming free again in the future, and most importantly, oriented to a meaning that they had to fulfill in the future, a task that they had to complete in the future, and or to be reunited with their beloved people in the future again. Let me just recount an incident that happened to me in one of my own concentration camps. I was confronted within a couple of days with two people, two comrades, the one of whom I knew that they are prone to suicide. Now what happened? I asked both why they wished to commit suicide, to take their lives, and without knowing, independently from one another, they told me, see doctor, I've nothing to expect from my life anymore. And you know what I improvisingly asked them, now listen, isn't it conceivable that instead life expects something from you? And then it turned out that one of them was expected by his own daughter, whom he loved above all. In the United States, she had already succeeded in emigrating. And the other, then Frankl told me and confessed that there was a series of books that he had written and or edited in the field of geography, it was, as far as I remember, and he wanted to complete this series of books. And at that moment there was something like a Copernican reversal. Suddenly the scenery had turned 180 degrees around. Suddenly they saw they have to do something for the world and not waiting until the judgment is issued, death or survival. But these very people had the highest chances to survive under equal circumstances, of course. What I mean is that millions had to die in the concentration camps, particularly in Auschwitz, as you might know, and millions and hundred thousands of them were certainly oriented toward a meaning, if for no other meaning, in religious terms. And they had to die, as they would have said, the Kiddush Hashem, for the glorification of God, out of their own beliefs in the gas chambers.
So even at the moment of death, they were able to take meaning out of that moment of death.
Exactly. You see, there is what I'm used to calling, when speaking to my students, as the tragic triad of human existence, consisting of pain, death, and guilt. Nobody is spared suffering from diseases, pain. No one of us human beings can escape death, finally. And there is no one who could keep himself free from guilt. It is not possible. But always, as I put it before, always suffering, tragedy can be turned into a triumph, into a human achievement. And as to death, it could well serve as an incentive to responsible action, because unless we were mortal, imagine if we were immortal, then we could postpone everything. There were no hurry. There were no need to do something right now. But there is a wonderful word of an author who has not written but said it about 2,000 years ago. You find it in the Bible. It is Hillel, Hillel, who once said, if I'm not doing it, who will do it? If I'm not doing it right now, when shall I do it? But if I'm doing it only for my own sake, what am I? This means no really human being. Because a human being is not someone, as psychotherapeutic systems depict the human being. He is not someone that is concerned primarily and originally with complexes, conditions, conflicts, and problems going on within his psychological system, intrapsychically, as it were. But normally, fundamentally, originally, primarily, basically, any human being is concerned with something out there in the world, is concerned with someone out there in the world, a work to do, a job to complete, a task, a meaning, a mission in life waiting for him exclusively, to be materialized, to be actualized by him and by no other person. Right now, who else if not he? And finally, this he doesn't do for himself, for his tranquility, for his discharge of tensions, for his inner equilibrium, for getting rid of the stimuli or of the superego which is dissatisfied, or obeying the father image. But he's doing it for the sake of a cause to serve, or another person to love, and never for himself only. Thus, this is what man can do. And imagine if he were not mortal, then he could postpone everything. There would not be the 1/3, the 2/3 of Hillel's dictum. There would not be sense in the formulation when, if not now, because he's immortal.